then I know it's her. Anyway, now we're streaming, correct? And I think we're past 6:30, so we can get a move on here. Good evening. This is the Camden Select Board meeting for June 1st, 2021. Welcome. Again, just an introduction in terms of the meeting format. We are still on the Zoom webinar format. The link for that is on the town's website under the Select Board tab, and it's on the top of our agenda for June 1st. You can click on that to join in and be an attendee. There's also instructions if you prefer to call in by phone. In terms of that, please feel free to submit questions and answers on any agenda item. Please identify whom you are as you do so, because we will not respond to anonymous questions and answers. And if you'd like to comment on an agenda item, please raise your hand and we'll try to get everybody in that we possibly can. With that, before I start the agenda, we obviously have this evening a rather bittersweet select board meeting. Sweet because we have our two friends, Jenna and Taylor here, and bitter because this is going to be the last one this term on their term on select boards. I don't convince, I wouldn't kid myself to think I could speak for anybody but to myself to say thank you so much for your contribution to making this a very unique team. It's been
thank
amazing.
you, Bob, and all of you. I was going to say I'll save mine for the select board report so I can cry after.
I just want everybody else here to know.
Thank you to the community also, and I'll say more later. But
well, we will of course welcome the two new select board members after the next 28th of the. Remember, everybody should vote. There are many things to vote for, including 4 candidates for select board, and 2 will be elected next week, and we will of course continue to form a very strong bond with them also and continue the great work that we need to do. But it's been rather unique with all of us who didn't know each other very well 3-4 years ago, and really have come together. And it's a testament. By the way, 3 or 4 years is a short time, especially when you're my age. But it's been great, and we're going to miss the heck out of you. And none of us ever agree with each other, but we sure respected each other, and I can't say how important that is. And we're going to miss both of you, but you know what? We know where you live.
Mark doesn't know where I live. This conversation.
It's some big farm somewhere on the road. I'm not quite sure which one. You just have to look for a lot of chickens.
Yeah, it's a big field and stuff. You can't miss it. But thank you, Bob, in all sincerity. It has and will be one of the biggest honors of my life to date. And this community is amazing, and you have a wonderful board, and you have some wonderful choices to vote for. And I see the board remaining very strong, and it's been a pleasure to be part of it, and I won't get myself too emotional before the meeting starts.
Well, we want to get out of your system, so but thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you, Bob.
Sure. With that, we will begin our agenda with the first item, which is always public input on non-agenda items. I do believe we have one Allison who may have raised his hand. Not.
Yes, I will
Thank
bring
you.
Elliot
Thompson
in here.
I see his name. Ellie, are you there?
I'm there. I'm here.
I can hear your voice. Would you kindly, especially since you're not in the video, would you just please identify yourself for the public?
My name is Elliot Thompson. I'm a resident of Camden. I live at 88 East Fork Road.
Thank you, Elliot. Please go ahead and proceed, and please kindly keep it to the 3-minute limit if you can. Oh, there you are. That's better. Good to see your face, Elliot. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm a member of the Town Harbor Committee. I appeared tonight as a citizen, and the comments and opinions I present are solely my own. My first issue is a concept for redevelopment of the municipal facilities at Steamboat Landing. The Town Comprehensive Plan, Chapter 12, the Harbor, Section Local Goals states to provide an efficiently managed harbor that balances commercial and recreational uses and maximizes the variety of boating opportunities available to the public. In Camden Harbor, the variety of recreational watercraft includes motor-powered boats, sailboats, dinghies, canoes, kayaks, and paddleboards. Camden's limited dinghy storage capacity and the accommodation of canoes and kayaks have been recurring topics at Harbor Committee meetings. The existing municipal facilities are congested, overcrowded. In recent months, there have been media reports about Camden Harbor redevelopment and a public-private venture between the town of Camden and Lyman Morse. The reports have included general descriptions of the proposed redevelopment, but details about this venture have not been made public. These media reports have described a public-private scope of work that could include an outer harbor breakwater, which was the subject of the 2016 Federal Interest Determination, FID, and protection of the steamboat landing boat launch, which is subject to frequent abuse from the elements. The origins of steamboat landing lie in the bean yard shipbuilding and the steamboat wharf constructed in the 1850s. The wharf was a substantial structure that endured the elements for a century. Now it is the location of the town public boat launch, temporary docking, and a portion of Camden's dinghy storage capacity. Today, I wish to present a concept for redevelopment of the municipal facilities at Steamboat Landing. This redevelopment would be designed to integrate with the proposed Lyman Morse Marina expansion adjacent to the municipal site. Developed municipal facility capabilities would include upgraded boat launch, robust and resistant to storm damage, expanded dinghy storage capacity, canoe, kayak, and paddleboard storage and launch capabilities, harbor view area with benches. What would this look like? Today, I don't have drawings or sketches, only words to outline a vision. I imagine a small wharf with ramps to floating docks with fingers to maximize dock lineal footage. Development of this concept would be an ideal topic for the Harbor Committee. Today, I ask you to consider this concept as an opportunity for Camden to upgrade boat launch ramp, develop additional capabilities, dinghies, canoes, kayaks, and create a public space, a view area, and benches. All of these would enhance the Camden Harbor waterfront experience. Steamboat Landing is the most feasible town-owned property for these capabilities and this type of development. The breakwater FID includes this projection. The proposed breakwater would increase mooring capacity 250% from 384 as defined in 2016, an additional 576 moorings. How are 500 plus additional boat users going to get to their boats? Where will all those dinghies tie up? Also consider this. The town comprehensive plan describes, page 93, the potentiality for reestablishing a ferry pier at the end of Steamboat Landing Road. Has ferry traffic been a consideration in the design of the Lyman Morse Marina expansion? Redevelopment of the harbor should include private and public benefits. Facts and notes: the existing boat launch was constructed in 2001. It's 20 years old.
Elliot, could you please summarize? And by the way, in parallel, I would suggest this is a great treatise. Could you submit that in writing to us?
I will submit it in writing. I got 5 lines to go here.
Okay, go ahead.
There is limited parking at the small lot on Cove Road. Current moorings 384 as defined in the FID. The breakwater will increase demand for the already stressed municipal dinghy storage, a huge demand. The breakwater creates an opportunity to establish or expand both public and or private launch services. And by launch, I mean about taking you out to your boat. This concludes my comments on this topic, unless there are questions.
Thank you very much, Elaine. As I said, it's very, very well put, and good to see you again. Would you please submit that in writing, if you don't mind, to the select board? That'd be great.
Yes, and then that gets sent to whom?
I'll send it to all 5 of us,
Okay, very good.
if you don't mind. Thank
My
you.
second issue is much shorter.
No, Elliot, I'm gonna have to cut you off now. We got to move on with our agenda. You've already gone past 5 minutes, so if you have anything else, why don't you submit it with the same package, please? Okay? Thank you, sir. Good to see you. On to item number 2, which is the approval of board minutes from May 18th and April 20th, 2021. FYI, we had tabled April 20th last time. It's now in the packet again. It's a rather complicated one, Audra, as you well know, because it's the budget meeting. That one, in my opinion, unless the board disagrees, probably should sit down with that and face to face, either you or I or whoever you choose, and go over it and mark it up so that it accurately reflects some of the decisions that were made. Because it's not a fault of the writing, it's just rather complicated. And I don't want to disagree with the terminology we used during the meeting. That's just an idea, unless your board has some other ideas with regard to April 20th minutes. What do you think, Audra?
I think there was just some confusion around. I think Mark had a comment during the last meeting about something, and there was some confusion around the correction that he wanted to make.
Yep.
I'm just trying to find where it is.
I remember what my comment was the last meeting.
Okay.
It appeared that, sometimes when, and I don't know if Caitlin's been doing this, but sometimes you use the old template and erase everything and type everything new, so you don't have to create a new template. It looked like some previous writing from previous meetings didn't get erased and was jumbled in with the last minutes. And it doesn't appear to be that way now on this one, although I do have a comment for these minutes as well.
It's up to you all. If you want to make comments and just approve it, that's fine with me. I just think there were a number of items that housekeeping in particular were related to the budget motions that we made that need to be a little bit more accurate. That's all. I'm happy to help, Audra. I don't want to, this is not fair to Caitlin to put this all in her bag. That's a really tough meeting to try to get all that budgetary discussion, the right terms, the right account, and all that stuff done accurately.
Yeah, if you wanna send it to me and I can make the corrections, I'll go back and look at the video too.
I'd be happy to help. I remember most of it. I don't want to just pass the buck. And we can sit down and probably mark it up in 15 minutes. I think it's probably that, because we know what those motions were. But anybody else have any comments on? Go ahead, Allison.
Yeah, I mean, I personally would think there are a million things that Audra should be doing other than rewatching our meeting. But maybe if you wanted to take a stab at it, Bob.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I say I don't want to put this on somebody else because we're in the middle of it. We understand it all, and I don't see if there's any way a third party could figure that out. It's just not fair.
It kind of, when you read it, it elevates certain things to a level that they really weren't. Just kind of glazing over other stuff. I have no idea how to fix this. There are also a bunch of typos in it, but I'm less concerned about that.
I'll take a whack at it, Audra, if it's okay with you. Because you're right, you don't need to be reviewing videos of our past meetings. And then I'll bring it to you and you can make sure that I'm not wrong also. And in the meantime, we'll just table April 20th until another meeting if it's okay with the board.
I do have one thing to say about.
Go ahead, Mark.
Hold on a second. Let's
Sure.
April 20th. Let me find it. There is an unusual typo. Now I'm having trouble finding it. Oh, and section number 6, it says there's a term used, approval of FY22 budget. Manager Kaler went over budget changes to the parks department. That it looks like a computer typo again.
That's all. That's
In
all.
two
It is.
different
Just
places
type
there.
it. Yeah, those are the easy ones. I think there are some more complicated ones, and
Yeah, I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
it
Yep.
seems that the computers are interfering with.
okay.
Clarity.
Well, if it's okay with the board, we'll table, see if he disagrees, the April 20th one, so I can take a whack at it and make sure Audra's in the same place.
Okay.
And then we still have the May 18th select board minutes. Do we have any comments on it?
Actually, we just lost Audra on the.
Could be. No
Oh,
comment.
yeah.
No comment.
I'm fine with the previous minutes.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to okay those.
okay.
Second.
Second, yeah.
Motion made second. Any further discussion? Not hearing any. Roll call vote. Jenna,
Aye.
Taylor,
Aye.
Allison,
Aye.
Bob, aye. Mark,
Aye.
5-0. Thank you very much. On to our Audra's computer's doing an automatic update. So,
Mine just did it a little bit ago. Yeah.
okay,
Just lucked
Oh.
out.
She tell you, she can come up here and sit with me if she wants.
there you go.
I'm fully vaccinated.
We're still into the business part of our meeting, so let's just keep going. Hopefully it won't last very long. We could take a 5-minute break if you want to. It's up to you guys, but I think we should keep moving. Item number 3 is, as everybody should know, our town report has been published with some phenomenal pictures that were done. Thank you, Allison, in the front cover. And the back cover is obviously Allison showing the front, which is the nice, great nighttime photo, tough to get, of the January 26th. I call it the Freeze Bowl, the night we approved, we approved the Siemens thing. And the back page, there is the back page is a great shot of Camden with 2 youngsters having some pizza, I believe, at Harbor Park. And if anybody can identify those 2 children, we will give them a free pass to come live to a select board meeting.
I can tell you that real quick, that photo, the first time I saw it, it was actually January 18th that photo was taken. And a friend of mine, her name's Marisa, had moved back here from Florida. Her husband's a 3rd-year law student. She's a psychiatrist. They have these 2 little girls. And I saw the photo on Instagram and I just thought, gosh, that is such like a perfect, it's using a table that we put out there during the pandemic. It's getting outside. They just moved back. They're joyful. They're these beautiful, happy kids patronizing a local business. And I just thought it was sort of like that moment in time kind of photo. And so I asked her right on the spot, and this was months ago, I said, no guarantees, but this just struck me and it just kind of lingered with me. And so Allison and I were talking about a few photos, but I'm really happy. She'll be so happy.
I would
And
also look.
Lena and Clara, if anyone's, they're very sweet little girls, and they participated in the trash cleanup as well. So that's my Cliff's Notes, not so Cliff's Notes.
Cool.
Thank everyone who put that together.
It was a great job, great job. But to that, this year, part of it is numerous pieces. We encourage everybody to pick one up when they get a chance. But part of it we'd like to address tonight is the dedication of this year's town report. And I don't know, Allison, if we have any of the.
No, I've done my best to lure them on
Okay,
without giving it away. Traditionally, this is a surprise, but it appears that my efforts have failed. They could be watching on YouTube.
true.
But I'll also point out now that Jenna said that the date on the photo was January 18th. That was well past the deadline that we were given for removal of the picnic tables from Harbor Park when those very controversial picnic tables were approved. But I think we would have had a riot on our hands if we took away all the picnic tables because people seem to have liked them. So yes, I suppose we can tell everybody now that it is Anita Broja Scott and Jeff Scott, who we were hoping to lure on to the meeting tonight to surprise with the annual report dedication. I thought about telling them that we were going to have a discussion about suspending all committees forever to get them on, but I decided that might backfire. So Anita and Jeff, if you happen to be watching on YouTube, it's not too late to feel really uncomfortable and join us here on screen as we talk about you. But yeah, the report this year, the select board decided to dedicate it to Anita Broga-Scott and Jeff Scott, two longtime committee members who we've all had many discussions with. And I'll just read that now, I guess is the best thing to do. The town of Camden is pleased to dedicate this year's report to Anita Broga-Scott and Jeff Scott, two people who have contributed immensely to the town over many years, both as individuals and as a team. From visionary concepts like the McGonagall Riverwalk to the minutia of crosswalk placement and pedestrian safety, their achievements offer a compelling case for what can be achieved by playing the long game of informed civic engagement, patient advocacy, and civil discourse. Perhaps this year, more than any before it, residents and visitors took to the streets and trails on foot, bicycle, and other non-motorized forms of transportation as they sought to make the best of the pandemic and quarantine. Camden sidewalks and pathways are getting more use than ever before, but many of them may not exist at all if not for the work of people like Jeff and Anita. Like many other town volunteers, they have donated thousands of hours to our town, serving as an institutional memory for a broad range of community interests and bridging the gap between select boards, town managers, and changes in staffing. Anita, a wildlife biologist, professional photographer, and talented artist, has served on the Camden Select Board, the Budget Committee, multiple iterations of Tannery Advisory Committees, and currently serves as chair of the Energy Committee and member of the Camden Rockport Pathways Committee and Planning Board. She is relentless in her pursuit to address climate change through both individual and community-wide initiatives, and was instrumental in urging the town to pursue renewable energy generating options, such as the solar array at Sagamore Farm and the energy saving initiative of converting the town streetlights to LEDs. She is known for her attention to detail, her willingness to ask questions, and her boundless energy for good. Jeff is a former director of marketing and missions of the Hurricane Island Outward Bound School, a very good mechanic and an avid cyclist and runner. He has served the town as chair of the Camden Rockport Pathways Committee for over a decade. He is the driving force and patient voice behind the McGonagall Riverwalk project and has quietly worked with government officials, committees, and administrators to identify opportunities and find common ground for the pathway, which will eventually provide a continuous route from downtown Camden to Shirt Tail. 3 sections of the Riverwalk are already complete, with additional sections in the works. Many may have thought it a pipe dream several years ago, but as each new section is born, people are already benefiting greatly from the enhanced connections they offer with our natural environment. Some in Camden may find it difficult to imagine living and working here from the perspective of someone who does not have a car, but there are many who find themselves in that position, either by choice or by circumstance. A telephone pole in the middle of a sidewalk may seem like a small issue for some of us, but in reality, it can be the difference between a route being plowed or not in the winter, and it can cause the sidewalk to be completely unusable for those in a wheelchair. A designated bike lane or shoulder can be the difference between kids feeling safe enough to bike every day to school or not. We all benefit from fewer cars on the road through cleaner air and reduced emissions, but the most vulnerable in our community benefit the most. Over the next 3 years, we will see a sidewalk from Matthew John Avenue to Shirt Tail, the extension of the Route 1 sidewalk from Quarry Hill past Hannaford all the way to Maritime Farms. These are just 2 examples of projects that have been over a decade in the making, from surveys to grant requests to public hearings to town votes and state approval. Community meetings and public hearings often draw people to speak up when there is an issue that impacts them or their properties directly. But long-term planning depends mostly on engaged citizens who are willing to put in the time to plan for community goals, which may take years to materialize. Often this means sitting through boring details and antiquated processes just to get a few paragraphs about pedestrian and bike paths inserted into the comprehensive plan. It means compromising in the short term rather than burning bridges completely when there is a disagreement. It means realizing that the person with whom you vehemently disagree on one issue may turn out to be your best ally on another. Anita and Jeff embody all of these concepts. They are passionate about Camden and a vision for the community where people can enjoy and navigate the built and natural without depending on a motorized vehicle. They have taken the long view, sticking it out when progress was slow, respecting other voices along the way, and providing a valuable voice and service to our entire community.
Allison?
Yes.
I texted Anita. She's coming on now. Jeff's not available. So can you look to see if she's showing up?
I've been watching Mark
Okay.
while she was talking. I'll keep my eye on it too.
We'll tell her, sorry,
Yeah, you lose.
30 seconds and notice. I'll look for her. Let's see.
I don't see her yet, Allison. We have 27 total, and it's been stuck on that for quite a while. Just give it a second.
She was watching on YouTube.
Oh,
I knew she, oh, you did?
Yeah, I texted, like probably Mark did to Jeff just now, that he's not available. But I think Anita will be soon.
Yeah, she said coming now. Jeff's not available. So
Yeah,
we'll see her in a moment.
right, no problem. Thank
But
you.
I can, while we're waiting for them, let me
Yep.
say I've worked with Anita on the Energy Committee for years and years now. And there's so much that has come to the town from, that committee and that dedication. It's astonishing the difference one person, a volunteer, can make for this town. And it's really rewarding to see. We're very fortunate to have both of them as members of this town.
Thank you, Mark. You're absolutely correct.
I was reading the Riverwalk Master Plan the other day, back when I too thought it was kind of just a crazy idea that was never going to happen. And in there, it said that as people were able to get closer to the river through the Riverwalk and learn more about it, that would likely inspire people to look into things like restoration and dam removal and fish passage. And it even provided a link to main rivers to their website. And I thought, oh my gosh, their master plan worked on me, even though I didn't ever know that was written in there. Oh, here we go.
Feature.
Oh, you did. She disappeared.
There she is.
Yep. She's coming. A nice hat. Nice hat, Anita. Nice hat. Do you have a face?
We would like to see the rest of you.
Yeah. There we go. There she is. Can you hear us, Anita? Okay. We can't hear you.
Oh,
You sound like a dead chicken.
oh, well, I don't know about that, but
I think she has to go find Jeff to fix her computer.
okay, let's.
Yes,
sure.
That was fairly accurate. On its way out, maybe.
Anita, you there? No sound, Anita. You're either muted or is your volume up? Not a good lip reader.
What, you could call him with your phone if you just go to under the microphone button. You can click there and it says they'll a bunch of options will come up and you can choose switch to phone audio. And then it'll give you a number to call in from your phone.
Right.
If you want to, you don't have to.
Yeah, her sound is just not fantastic at all.
This is the quietest I've ever heard. Or-
I know. The one,
Wow, it's a really interesting problem.
I know. Sounds like music.
Is this any different?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
That's better, Anita.
Hi, Anita. There you are.
Well, you just missed a glowing tribute to you and Jeff, so goodbye. No, just kidding. You probably heard what's going on, Anita. The town of Fort Cheshire is dedicated to Anita Brocious Scott and Jeff Scott.
What?
Yes, that's true.
Hold
But-
it up.
But it's gonna cost you. No more.
What?
Oh, you didn't even hear it.
You
Oh,
You're never.
you're gonna have to rewind the YouTube video. So we've dedicated the annual report.
Wonderful dedication. Oh,
Kidding me?
No, we're not.
Are you nuts?
This is real.
hard to think of anyone more deserving than the
Yeah, this is real.
two of you. And
This is embarrassing. You're kidding.
No, it's not embarrassing. It's, you deserve it, but we tried to do this in a surreptitious way and then get you invited to the meeting by the back door. It didn't work, obviously, so I apologize for that, but yes, you and Jeff this year are our dedication for our town report.
I can't believe it. What in the, you must have been really desperate.
No.
Well, it was before the latest string of emails, but
Well, that was a good shot.
every year I've been on the select board, you guys have been on a very short list. I definitely has always been.
Oh my gosh, I can't get over it. That's,
It was a very easy selection.
Yeah.
you guys are incredible. That's amazing.
We
You're
will have,
getting people that's always easy to count on. No matter what the topic is, I'm always curious what Anita and Scott have to say about it. It seems like the knowledge you both have goes far and wide.
true.
Oh my God,
We will have a
I'm
town report.
incredulous.
Anita, we will have a town report that Allison was just showing, but one where we will all, kind of like a gift card, giving a little note in it to you to keep for your and Jeff's original. And of course, take as many copies to the family as you want.
all right, I'm texting this thing to you. Since you didn't
Dedication.
hear the words that we wrote, whatever you call that.
And thank goodness it's appropriate that you're wearing a Camden, Maine hat at
Yeah.
the moment. This is good timing.
For all the years of your guys' work, Anita, Jeff, you passed on to Jeff, of course. It's a small way of saying thanks.
Oh, I don't know what to say. I'm just blown away. I'm utterly blown away. Thank you. And it's
You're
incredible.
very welcome.
Thank you for everything you do. I don't think I can think of anyone that has worn more hats for a longer time. And the dedication speaks to the long game. And I think of, you guys, I think of my dad's huge amount of respect for you and just hearing your name sort of as part of the tapestry of this community for so long.
Oh my gosh. I'm just
Getting the opportunity to work with you,
I can't believe it. I'm just,
you're so deserving.
It took Allison 25 minutes just to read all the committees you've been on.
About that.
But just look at it this way, and you'll have something nice to pick up tomorrow and read, well, after your coffee tomorrow. So the town reports are here. They were published a little bit later than we wanted this year, but that's the way it goes these days. But they're here, ready to be distributed to the town with you and Jeff's picture in it.
oh my gosh.
All right, well, we won't be.
No, we won't belabor it. You can hang around for a little bit if you want to, Anita, because you deserve it. But we're going to kind of stroll into the next couple of things, including in a minute the watershed update, which you may be interested in. Our next item on the agenda is a consent agenda, which we have two items, which is the
Thank you, Anita.
Yeah, thanks, Anita. The approval of renewal Bittler license for Long Grain and the Smoothie Shack. And the second item is extension of the liquor license for Oyster River Wine Growers at 31 Elm Street for outside serving. Are there any objections to the items on the consent agenda?
No
Not
objection.
hearing any, they are hereby adopted. We'll go to item 5, Allison, and we should start bringing on our friends. That you probably know them a lot better than I do by name. So this is
Yeah,
update from the
could you-
Watershed School.
could everybody who is presenting for Watershed, if you could raise your hand through the Zoom feature, and Bob, maybe if you could start bringing some of them
I will be happy if you want to intro it.
Yeah, that would be
I got
perfect.
it.
So as many already know, the town has an ongoing relationship with the Watershed School for the past 5 years or so. They have been making an annual contribution to the town by usually researching something, writing something all related to climate change. And each year we kind of learn a little bit more. It's always a different group of students and sometimes a different teacher, but it's really enhanced the just general community conversation that we've had surrounding climate change and all the ways that's going to impact Camden. This year, even with the pandemic, it was really amazing to me to see some of the things that the Watershed School was doing, even with a brand new teacher for the climate change class, Mila, they were still able to accomplish a lot of really great stuff. And so we asked them to come here tonight to present just a few of the things that they're doing at the school that connect to some of the work that we're doing here. It was originally just going to be the comprehensive plan proposed updates that the climate change class has been working on. But then the other night I saw the presentations that their senior class did on a few things. And I was so blown away by a couple of the overlapping items with their climate change class and with some of the things that are relevant to the town that we asked them to actually just lengthen their presentation just a little bit. So there are so many ways that the Watershed School is contributing to our town, and we just wanted them to share a few of those things tonight. So thank you guys for being here.
Who's taking the lead? Anybody volunteer?
I'm starting. So in initial communication, it was suggested that it would be helpful for the town if Watershed students could write a document about climate change that was easy to add to the current comprehensive plan. Reading the current Town of Camden comprehensive plan, we were happy to find that a lot of recommendations from the 2015 Watershed report were already included. So we summarized the 2017 to 2020 Watershed reports and added what we thought was most important for the town to know. In addition, we studied the 2020 Maine Climate Council report and included those recommendations that were applicable to the town of Camden. The town has already taken actions to become more energy efficient and eventually carbon neutral. However, there are still more areas the town needs to improve and consider regarding adaptation to climate change impacts. We are confident that we have created a valuable document that will help the town meet its goals.
Climate change will have many negative impacts, especially in Maine. For example, the Gulf of Maine warms faster than 99% of the rest of the world's oceans. The rising temperatures will impact fisheries as accommodations will need to be made for longer warm seasons and the disruptive migration of aquatic species. Similar impacts will happen on land with farmers and ranchers. For example, with fishers, increased carbon dioxide in the ocean will cause ocean acidification, which will result in shellfish being less able to actually develop the shells they need. Combined with the migration of fish away from Maine as it warms, we'll see significant impacts on the fishing industry as the century progresses. In addition, the heat patterns will cause Maine's climate to resemble somewhere between New York's climate if we have low emissions, or even Virginia's climate if we have high emissions by the end of the century. The disruption in climate will cause several issues. Invasive species like the hemlock woolly adelgid and insects pests carrying diseases like Lyme will migrate from the south as iconic Maine animals like moose, loons, balsam firs, and most black-capped chickadees flee for cooler weather in Canada. As more days cross into the high 90s, Camden's high elderly population will be more likely to fall ill to heat stroke because their bodies won't be able to vent heat, along with other physical problems. This will also apply for children and will need to be addressed with expensive infrastructure like more air conditioning to facilitate life in extreme heat. Maine will also become wetter, creating new habitats ripe for spring disease. Increased precipitation will show in the form of heavy rainstorms that will cause more runoff at tails of mountains, increased water pollution, and more floods damaging roads and buildings around Macuntuck. In addition, decreased snowfall will reduce tourism, harming the economy. The Camden Snowball will be even less economical for Camden to run and maintain with rising temperatures and decreasing snowfall.
Thank you, Thor. Next up.
Scientists say that if we stay in our current emissions path, we have 3 to 4 decades until our Earth's climate is irreversibly altered. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says that countries must collectively prevent the temperature from rising 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit above the pre-industrial temperatures to avoid the worst effects of climate change. Camden's defining feature is how it draws visitors in with its historic village center surrounded by a scenic harbor. With that attraction being so close to the water, Camden becomes vulnerable to rising sea levels, storm surges, and increased erosion. Sea level rise will affect every aspect of Camden's inner and outer harbors and the town's infrastructure. A project rise of 6 inches to 2 feet by mid-century, depending on future emissions, will result in floods damaging commercial buildings and homes on the waterfront, and eventually various areas around the harbor and downtown Camden will be lost. The impacts to businesses, residents, and roads could cost the town hundreds of thousands in tax dollars. In addition, sea level rise will affect valuable local industries such as fishing, lobstering, and tourism. This will increase waterfront insurance costs, along with threatening Camden's environment, economy, and culture. The two major long-term factors contributing to sea level rise are the thermal expansion of water and the melting of land ice. Other phenomena, such as storm surges from tropical storms and nor'easters, unusually high tides, and seasonal changes in precipitation can affect sea level for short periods. Since 1880, a global mean sea level has risen by about 8 to 9 inches, with about 3 inches of that occurring since 1993. In the Gulf of Maine, where water is warming more quickly than in other parts of the globe, sea level trends have been higher than the global average over the past several decades. Sea level is now rising at a rate about 1 inch every 8 years, which is much faster than any time in the past 5,000 years. There is mid-range sea level rise. These projections put future sea levels in the Gulf of Maine by about 3 feet above modern levels by 2100. Both the current highest annual tides and low-end projections will have an impact on buildings, and roads, and infrastructure in Camden. The areas that will be most affected include the inner harbor, especially the buildings along the shore side of Bayview Street and Sherman Point.
Thank you, Garrett. Next up.
Nate's next, but he was having some audio problems.
Oh,
Let's see if
okay.
he works. And
We can, Nate, are you okay or not? If you're not, we can come back to him, Mila. Would that work?
yeah, let's try that. So we'll go to Maggie next.
All right. Is everyone hear me? Okay.
Yes, very well.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Electric vehicles continue to be branded as part of the solution to the climate dilemma. But in order for electric cars to become more regular, we need to implement more EV charging stations around Camden. There are currently only 5.
It's okay, Maggie. Go away.
Only 5.
I think it. Oh, sorry.
Okay, only 5 charging stations not individually owned, with most customer owned and some only inclusive to Teslas. An additional few charging stations placed around the town could be the solution to the lack of electric cars seen around Camden. To do its part in supporting statewide EV adoption, Camden should aim for about 106 new electric vehicles by 2025 and 564 new vehicles by 2030. This can also be done with a more rapid schedule of decommissioning gas or diesel vehicles, especially with public transportation, garbage trucks, and school buses, which is the second highest municipal energy use in Camden, and police cruisers. If converting to electric vehicles is not feasible, the town should try to convert its fleet and incentivize residents to convert their fleet to higher efficiency gas or diesel vehicles, which would also reduce fuel costs. Increased biofuel usage and voluntary entrance into the EPA's SmartWay program would increase the efficiency of heavy vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Tate, you ready? Your sound muted, Nate.
Okay.
There you go. You got it. You had it.
Okay, great. So I'm a bit out of order now, but I'm going to expand a bit more on what Garrett was talking about. with sea level rise. So for more specifics, low estimates put this sea level rise in the Gulf of Maine to 1 to 2 feet by 2050 and to more than 4 feet by the end of the century. And as for specific risks to Camden, a 1 foot increase in the highest annual tide will result in 15 buildings affected. 2 foot increase to the highest annual tide will result in 27 buildings. 3.3 will result in 38. And the worst case scenario by 2100, a 6 feet increase, that will result in 50 buildings being affected. And one thing to know is that this is still only based on tides. So any storm surges, even minor ones, could have catastrophic effects. So as we move into the recommendation portions of this that Maggie touched upon, one idea would be to regulate how high a building must be, and that would from the water, and that would need to be increased. It's not just buildings that will be affected. An increase of 2 feet to the highest annual tide will affect a total of 680 feet of road, and an increase of 3.3 feet will affect more than 1,000 feet of road, and at 6 feet, more than 2,000 feet of road will be affected. So those are some more specifics on the sea level rise that Garrett was talking about.
Thank you, Nate. Who's up next, Mila? Oh,
All
Fisher.
right, so can you all hear me?
Yes, very well, Lily. Thank you.
So I'm kind of switching back into following Maggie's point, and similarly to her focus on electric vehicle transportation, more effective transportation programs and updated zoning can greatly reduce Camden's transportation sector emissions. So infrastructure funding could bring great changes to public transport, including an extension of the Amtrak Downeaster into Rockland, and other options include ride-sharing programs such as Zipcar. Similarly, a community emphasis on individual changes such as cycling or walking rather than driving would cut transportation emissions. And this kind of goes hand in hand with updated zoning, which would bring a denser, more pedestrian-friendly downtown Camden, meaning that schools, workplaces, and shops would all be within walking distance of housing, reducing transportation emissions year-round and especially during the tourist-heavy summers.
Thank you, Lily.
Okay, so building off of that, new construction ordinances need to be implemented to ensure that any new construction is not built where the sea level will continue to rise in the future. Camden land that will be underwater by mid to late century should not be built on now. The town could consider acquiring land in high-risk areas. Projects in vulnerable areas like the public landing and Riverwalk should take sea level into account, and any new construction needs to look at sea level rise as a priority. And this needs to be enforced on a town level so that we can make sure no one is building too close to the ocean.
Thank you, Vivian. Do we have?
A recommendation that we want to make is to educate Camden residents on climate change and advocate for positive change in the community, because these are vital to combat climate change. The town must help its residents to visualize the impact of climate change in Camden, and individuals should be educated in the steps they can take to reduce their own carbon footprint. A useful resource is Efficiency Main Trust. Is an independent administrator for programs and incentives that are made in order to help Maine residents to upgrade their efficiency of their home and businesses. Camden should consider raising awareness with a variety of methods and media resources, such as informational town meetings, details and accessible town websites, and developing other ways to help the residents of Camden visualize the climate impact. A great start for the town were the library talks made this spring.
Thank you, Naomi.
Our class also looked at how we could get traditional Maine fish back to their historic Maine rivers. Camden rivers, sorry. Camden's history of shipbuilding has left Camden a legacy of several dams, which unfortunately have damaged modern Camden's river ecology. So logically, the most effective way to do river restoration should be with dam removal. Low-risk removal or modification of several dams, including the Knox Mill, Brewster, and Knowlton Street dams, result in better management of floods exacerbated by climate change, along with returning many fish to local main rivers that are currently blocked from. For example, over 300,000 ecologically vital alewives could return to the Maguntacook after river restoration, along with the return of many other traditional Camden fish, including blueback herring and the American eel. The removal of dams, many of which would not be currently buildable under modern regulations, is also relatively low risk and would reduce maintenance costs over the long run. To emphasize the stunning beauty of the new fish that we can bring back to the Maguntacook after river restoration, my classmates have selected a few fish they will describe to the select board. First, we have Maggie telling us about the alewife.
Okay, I had the alewife, which is an anadromous species of herring found in North America. Alewives use the Maguntacook River to spawn, and it is necessary that they have access to this river. As an adult, it is a marine species found in the northern West Atlantic Ocean, and it moves into estuaries before swimming upstream to breed into freshwater habitats. An interesting fact about alewives is that they lay as many as 100,000 eggs, but only a few eggs survive to the juvenile stage, and sometimes only as few as 3 juveniles survive into adulthood.
Okay, so my fish is the American eel, and American eels are the only caduceus species on the Gulf of Maine. So this means that they spawn in the ocean and live in freshwater instead of the other way around. So obviously having access to local rivers is extremely important to this endangered species because freshwater is where American eels spend most of their lives.
The blueback herring is native to the Atlantic Ocean and spends most of its life in marine water. It is anadromous, meaning that blueback herring migrate to freshwater to spawn and spend larval development there. Spawning runs start in April and last until mid-August, while most of the large spawning runs are made from mid-May to mid-July, which is why people often refer to blueback herring as summer herring. The blueback herring is a species of concern. Populations decline, among others, because the fish have less access to spawning areas from the construction of dams.
I looked at the rainbow smelt, which is native to North American watersheds, and it is an anadromous species, meaning it ascends from saltwater to freshwater in order to spawn. Rainbow smelt are generally weak swimmers, and this prevents them from making it past dams to the streams where they spawn. The steep dams and barrier walls in the Maguntacook make it impossible for rainbow smelt to return. And so there is hope that removing the Maguntacook dams and returning the river to its natural state will bring the rise of rainbow smelt populations.
Thank you, Lily.
Sea lampreys are anadromous fish too, and so they burn in fresh water. They spend most of their lives in salt water, and they return to fresh water to spawn. Larval sea lampreys are freshwater field feeders that consume organic materials in the fount of the river bottoms. You can find them in the Maguntacook River now, but is a main native species, and they usually recognize the main coast rivers after dam removal.
Thank you, Naomi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Garrett.
Okay, great. Just making sure. The fish that I studied was the sea-run brook trout, which is a very popular fish to fish for. It is diadromous, which means it spends part of its life in land, part of its life at sea. It doesn't go out just for its adult life to sea and then spawn in freshwater. It just spends like part of its juvenile life in sea as well, I think. It spawns from September to November. They're 9 to 12 inches long on average. 90% of the sea-run brook trout in America live in Maine. And if without the dams in their way, their populations could rebound quickly. They will eat pretty much anything, and they're mostly preyed upon by bigger fish and herons and osprey.
Thank you. I think we lost Nate. I'm not sure he was supposed to participate in this point, Mila, or not. But is this portion, I know you had some other portions to talk about in a minute, but is this portion completed?
Almost. We just wanted to hear from one last fish from Jamie, and also she'll talk about the website. And Jamie, if you don't mind, I'm actually going to do a screen share for the website while you're talking.
Okay, no, I don't mind. I can start. Can I start now? Okay. So watershed students were asked to create a mural for the public restrooms in the Camden Harbor area to educate the public about river restoration. About restoration. The junior art class has decided to paint the fish that are likely to return to the Magantakuk, which you just heard about, and point out that not only the fish populations will recover, but also the water quality will improve if the dam was removed. Located in the harbor area, lots of people, both locals and tourists, will be able to see it. They will have a chance to learn more about these fish and birds that benefit from increased fish populations on the website the junior biology class is creating, and that will be accessible via an QR code on the mural. And you can see it on the screen.
Yes. Great.
Okay, so I'm just gonna talk a little bit about my senior project, which is actually involved with the mural that Jamie was talking about. I'm just gonna screen share really quickly.
Sure.
Okay, can everybody see it?
Yes.
Okay. So for my senior project at Watershed, I wanted to do something related to art. Since Watershed School focuses so much on community and art, well, since it focuses so much on community, combining community and art for my final project seemed like a good fit. But what is community art? Community art is any type of artistic expression based in communities and is usually led by professional or career artists and requires them interacting with various members of their community who most likely don't interact much with art. Community art is based around learning and social change. Community art is beneficial because it's centered around collaboration, education, and creativity by incorporating many people's ideas and talents into the piece. At its best, community art encompasses the entire community. Although my project consisted of working on several murals, for today, I'm just going to talk about the climate change mural. My introduction to community art was helping Watershed's art classes with the climate change mural in Camden Harbor. Hallie Arno, a Watershed alum and intern for the climate change class, called the town to get permission to use the building, which is the restroom building in the Camden Harbor parking lot. My role is to oversee the planning and creation of the mural. I work with Watershed teacher Deborah Hoffman and the Watershed biology class in designing the mural, planning the logistics, and doing the actual painting. There are some obvious challenges with this type of work, besides securing a location. You need financing in order to secure painting supplies, and you need enough people to help with the project. Then there's some less obvious challenges, like getting the measurements of a building without having to climb up and measure it for yourself. For those types of things, you may need a copy of the building's blueprints, and that's not always readily available. When I worked on murals, I found working on a giant open vertical space a lot easier than it would be because messing up isn't that obvious. And it was also cool to see businesses that you wouldn't think would interact with the art world excited to do so. For example, I went to the dump recently and the manager there spoke to us about possibly putting up a mural. And I thought that was really cool since most people wouldn't equate art with the dump. Much of my project was obviously spent doing actual painting, and I learned a lot about the process. For example, base coats are important because it seals the surface of the wall as well as it allows a better surface for the top coat to be painted on. Not all murals need base paint. It depends on the surface that the mural will be on. But base paint allows the paint to stick easier. Our work on the Watershed climate change mural began with research on what types of fish and plant life live in the Magantakuk River. Finding out which inhabited the river was a simple process, but finding out what plant life lay at the bottom required a bit more hands-on work. We wanted to see what it looked like so we could accurately portray the river in the mural. The purpose of this mural is to educate the community about the threat of climate change and encourages all of us to protect the Magantakuk River. We had an underwater camera accessible to us. It has an infrared camera, which makes it ideal for seeing through the darkness underwater. I took it swimming to the bottom, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to find a ton of plant life at the spots I checked out, but I was able to get some close-up recordings of the fish species that live there. After we did the research on what fish would go on the mural, we decided what colors to use. We painted the background on first and then started with the fish. That's where the class is at now. And the next step after that is to go to the site and actually attach the mural to both sides of the bathroom building. And we're hoping to have that up very soon so you all can go see it. This project taught me all the behind the scenes work that goes on when approaching a public art project, including how many community members are involved in the process. I also learned a lot about various types of art, such as painting, stamping, block carving, measuring, and how important precision is when it comes to planning for a mural. It's my hope that the work I help to create makes a difference in our community. I hope the Watershed Climate Change mural educates our community and all the tourists about the natural life that inhabits our waterways and how those creatures are essential to a sustainable environment. For the rest of my life, every time I see a mural or another piece of community art, I'll think about how much work goes into creating such a piece. And more importantly, I'll consider the important messaging behind each work of art. And there's just a thank you to everyone who helps in my process.
Thank you, Alden. Thank you very much. I believe we have one more. Caleb?
Yes, I'm going to jump in, share my screen here. Okay. Yeah, so a big piece of what I worked on is really kind of a combination of all of these things. Thinking about how can we both prepare Camden Harbor and also the infrastructure along the river for sea level rise and flooding, but also open up the river for fish passage. And I'm just going to go through, here's just some climate data, which was already talked about. I'm sure many of you have already seen these images, but we have already seen pretty severe flooding in Camden Harbor, and all of that's projected to continue, as Nate talked about, just in terms of different scenarios. And so the current infrastructure isn't working, and that seawall that's attached to Montgomery Dam is really not going to cut it in the future. And we're kind of in a almost fortunate position where we can kill two birds with one stone and also approach addressing fish passage as well. So a big piece of what I did I thought about how can we reimagine how we interact with Harbor Park and with Montgomery Dam. Obviously, Camden is a very storied place. It's on the National Registry, and anything regarding even the smallest change to Harbor Park is, hotly contested. And so a big piece of what I focused on is how can we, in both community messaging and also at this level, at the town planning level, encourage kind of this revision of what Harbor Park could be and reimagining how we can interact with it. So I did some sketches trying to kind of put a visual to all the ideas that I had. This one here is just referring to a footbridge that's really been talked about for years in Camden, which could basically connect the town landing and Harbor Park. Right now, there's kind of that island in the middle where the waterfall comes down, and if the Montgomery Dam were to be removed, the river naturally flows underneath the Camden, really underneath the Smiling Cow, and so there is all sorts of more potential for using that island space now as kind of an add-on to Harbor Park. And here's another angle, or really another bridge. And this is leading up to what's now the spill pool underneath the Camden Deli, and if the river were to not be kind of broken up, that spill pool would basically just disappear. And so that opens up all sorts of new real estate, which could, as I've drawn here, could turn into a grassy seating area, which could be used by the restaurants, or it could just be kind of a public space for people to gather. And a lot of the taller trees on that island could be taken out, so there could be a really nice view of the entire harbor there. Here's a slightly different angle showing that footbridge leading up to the seating area up there, and then of course there could be another bridge over here as well, connecting all the way to Harbor Park. Now, in terms of sea level rise resiliency, there are all sorts of ways, fancy engineering ways, and the town obviously is looking into that, and they have done feasibility studies with the engineering firm Interfluve. But thinking about how would we interact with that new infrastructure, I'm really interested in this idea of a boardwalk. And so not only is this good, it's a good system to deal with increases in sea level rise and those higher tides, but it's also could open up some really amazing ways that we could use this shoreline. And so this is depicting just a kind of a soft winding boardwalk along basically where that seawall is now would be the natural riverbed and be a much wider river. And then there's potential for a boardwalk and a footbridge across the river. And I just encourage everyone to imagine kind of walking over that footbridge in the spring and, you know, looking down and seeing all the alewives swimming up. If anyone's been to Damariscotta and seen the fish runs there, it's a really cool experience, and we could have that in our town. And it could not only be something great for locals, but it could be something that would pull in tourists as well. Here's another angle with showing some steps down to the riverbed. Right now, parents kind of worry about their kids falling over the seawall, and there's all sorts of potential to have that riverbed because where the ocean kind of meets the fresh water, it would be this really beautiful ecosystem boom. And there'd be tide pools and a real intertidal zone and all sorts of cool creatures for kids to explore and play with. And it could really become this like little piece of natural Maine wilderness right in our downtown. And that's something that I think Watershed and the town is really excited about. And, you know, all of this is kind of a culmination of, it could really be this multifaceted benefit. And so I just kind of closing out, there's, you know, obviously a lot of debate around what is best in terms of infrastructure. I know that some businesses worried about increasing connectivity between the town landing and Harbor Park. Some are worried that if you walk, if tourists specifically aren't forced to walk all the way around Main Street, they won't go by the businesses. They'll just instead cut over on the harbor side. And I would, of course, say to that, tourists are coming to Camden to see Camden, and they're not here to only see the harbor or the boats. They're really here to enjoy all of Camden. And so, you know, nothing's going to stop the tourists from walking by all the shops and going in. And there's also, you know, increasing accessibility and expanding Harbor Park is only going to benefit the town. So that's really what I focused on. And obviously, you're all welcome to reach out to me with questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Caleb. Very impressive sketches, and all of them think their project also. Mila, is that the extent of the presentations at this point? I thought we covered most of it.
Yes.
By the way, you did an excellent job as an associate professor at Wentworth. I wish I had so many students in my class. They're obviously hellishly creative and did a great job of presenting. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much. I just want to thank the town for the town's support and with this mural and with the climate change information. And we'll be getting the planning board and the select board a draft of what we would propose for an additional comprehensive plan chapter on climate change. And we hope to have the mural up this month. So, and just want to thank you all very much.
That's pretty ambitious, Mila. Go for it. Thank you all, every one of you all, I believe 10 of you that showed up tonight did a great job. I'm sure we'll hear more from you in the near future. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. We're back to our agenda. We have two. Do you need help with this, Allison? I'll give you.
No, I don't need help. Thank you for asking.
I was willing to help, but that's okay. Anyway, we want to get to our we have two action items on our agenda. The first of which is the approval of the use of contingency for additional GIS layers. Audra, do you want to intro that? Is the other way want to intro that?
Certainly. So we talked about this a little bit during the budget process. I think that, you know, this year is a really good sort of opportunity to, you know, expand our GIS infrastructure. it's very useful, I think, both internally to the town and then externally to our residents for a number of different applications. I think the one that people use most is sort of the property data layer, but there are many other sort of options and opportunities. We've been working on stormwater data and creating a layer that shows where our stormwater infrastructure is and getting a better sense of what we have, and that's going to be really important for future planning. So that's just sort of an example, but there's a lot more that we could be doing and making available to the public. But it's also, I think, going to be really important for us in our own planning, because geospatial planning is becoming, I mean, everywhere else it's how you do any sort of urban planning activity. So we're kind of coming from a position where we're behind in the information that we have available to us, but I do think we have a lot of good options and a lot of ways that we can sort of make a pretty modest investment and get much more usable information that everybody can take advantage of. So just to give you an idea, I'd be looking for a do not exceed $10,000, and it wouldn't just be creating new layers. It could be a number of different functions. One of I think the most relevant ones that I really want to look at this year is we're budgeting for a licensing and permitting system, and I would like that system to link to property data as well, so that it's easier to find everything in one place. And that's sort of a function that if we had funds available, we would be able to do. But there's a lot of other things that I think would be beneficial to us. Things like setting up an ArcGIS data hub. So all the information that we have on the town of Camden, there's some information that we're responsible for updating, some that we get from the state. Just being able to have that all in one place where people can access it, I think it would be useful. Also, there's a lot of frustration with the fact that we only update property data on an annual basis. We don't do it sort of on an ongoing basis, but we could put something in place with CAI, who we work with to manage our geospatial information, where we'd be able to update that on an ongoing basis. And then there are other projects that we have going on that just having more funding available would give us more flexibility to do more on them. I think a good example of that is we have a college student who's working on a project to map all of the impervious surface in the town of Camden, and having that student who's doing that work for free be able to work with our GIS administrator would be really helpful. It would just make it much more usable from the onset. I'm missing a ton of stuff, but I just wanted to give sort of a general overview of what it would be useful to use that money on.
The $10,000, are you talking about purchasing additional software or just more labor to input the layers into the software?
There would be some software component to it, but by and large, it's the labor around data input.
Right. And so that, I mean, because I assume there's, in layman's terms, of a layer could be the drainage system, a layer could be the sewer system, a layer could be
street trees.
Yeah, exactly, whatever you want. Yeah. But it's the labor component is usually the most expensive. 10K sounds long.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's going to be really important is having a portable GPS that can help us, map the coordinates of different pieces of infrastructure that we're trying to map.
Allison.
Yeah, so I would say that $10,000 is, that would certainly be helpful. There's also a lot more that we could do. A lot of towns that have as many projects going as we do, and sort of the sophistication of issues, would employ a full-time person that just does GIS, so that when we want to know things quickly, like how many properties would be impacted if we change this part of our, zoning to allow for dwelling, X number of dwelling units. All of that stuff is, analysis that can be done. We have a really good company that we already work with in CAI, and we've had a few meetings with them. They can do a lot of this stuff on an as needed basis. So I think it might be better to, I would advocate for putting into more like $15,000 to $20,000 because I think Otter's trying to be conservative here a little bit, but since we are investing in things like online permitting and putting our zoning ordinance into the E-code 360, I think this is an area where people are frustrated in Camden a little bit. There's no reason for us to be behind everybody else. It takes a lot of staff time to be able to answer questions that could be answerable by going to a properly working, geodatabase that would, other towns are doing things like mapping out all of their shade trees. You'd be able to submit a request online for a new tree to be planted, everything, things like that. Right now, what we're doing with the stormwater is going to allow us to be able to say that any drop of water that falls in Camden, what path is that going to take? And that's really important when identifying things like, the sources of pollution in our harbor. We've just gone around and around and around and around because we have incomplete data sets. So I think there does need to be a little bit of flexibility in the funding to be able to say, okay, here's an opportunity to enhance something. I guess I'm just advocating for, a little bit more than 10,000 and.
Marco.
Audra, would 15,000 be a better amount of money for you? And do you have the budget for it?
Well, that would certainly give us more flexibility to do more.
Right.
Like this is kind of one area where we sort of underinvested in for quite a while. And
Then I'd like to make a motion that we approve use of contingency funds up to $15,000 for in the action item for additional GIS layers and the work involved to create that.
Second.
Motion made and second. Discussion. I think it's way too low. I think, Audrey, you're way underestimated the amount of labor it takes to do a decent job of this information, and $15,000 that's for a consultant, that's a third of the man month. It's just not enough. I couldn't approve 15,000.
The thing is, by the time we get, if we were to purchase proper equipment, and we could certainly spend a lot more to really do things right. Some of it may be that I think that for something beyond 15,000, there might be some additional input from the select board that would be good. To what we were talking about with CAI was, if they could give us some examples of some of the things that other towns are doing. For years, Camden has kind of been, known to them as wanting to keep the absolute bare minimum. And that's kind of what we've been doing, and it's kept the budget really, really low. But there are other towns that are doing, really cool things. So maybe for some, we could go, there's about $15,000 worth of work and equipment that we could do pretty easily as sort of no brainers, but we could also spend something like $100,000, which we may not want to do. So
that's very
the second phase of it might be good to have the select board say, let's really go for this, but hold off on this. And it might be good to have,
I would say with about 15, we can purchase the equipment, we can set up the data hub, and we can get going with some of the actual data collection that we would like to do in order to create those layers. So that it's not everything, but it's kind of like a good first step.
I get that, but I'd like to see some results from what we're spending money on, and to spend some money what the cost is when you have some assistance from somebody to take this data and put it into a layer. And it seems to me we should be doing some of that as part of this first phase. Now, it may not be a bunch of layers, but, and I'm not sure which one you want to start with, whether it's the real estate part or the piping part, but that's why I think 15,000 is, it's going to cover, like you said, it's going to be a data acquisition. It's going to be whatever software you need, upgrades, whatever. You should be budgeting some money for somebody like CAI to be doing some of the work to get us on the first step of the ladder.
Yeah, and one thing I think it would be good for me to come back to you when we've picked out, because we haven't even really picked out what permitting and licensing software we're going to use, and sort of explaining how that works and how it's going to integrate in with GIS. So I could come back when we get to that point, if we want to talk about, more resources for that.
Okay, well, we have Mark's motion for, was it 15, Mark?
Yes.
Okay, and it was seconded. Any other discussion?
I do think that the way that it's phrased isn't quite right. The referring to it as layers is slightly misleading, because it's not necessarily for a specific individual layer, although that has been a discussion in the past. And the big problems that we have is that the way it's set up currently, a lot of our layers and a lot of our information isn't accessible or downloadable to the public. Or to partner organizations. And so, for example, when the student was creating this impervious surface layer, it required a lot of communication just to be able to get to the files, to be able to download them so that she could manipulate them. And so we might just want to phrase the motion in a way that's for GIS improvements. And so that's going to be the licensing, the setting up of more flexible hubs, and then the actual decisions about which new layers we want to invest in. You're right, like each layer, we just spent last year budgeted was around $30,000 to do a stormwater. That's kind of like a realistic starting from zero to do our stormwater system layer. And that's not even, and now we're chipping away at adding some, photos to each of those things.
Right.
But this is just getting us to the point where we can invest.
Well, one second, Mark, or just to be clear, with the 15,000 then give you enough in your mind to be able to develop what I'm hearing is more of the database, the information, so we can go to the next step to do layers or whatever we decide to do downstream. We'll have to approve more money. Is that?
Yeah, I think that's going to put us in a better position to be able to, and I think it's more about making that information usable once we have it.
Okay. Any other comments, Mark?
Well, I was just going to say, let's alter it to say that approval of the $15 to begin the process of upgrading our ability to create for the GIS system.
Okay, that's more logical. I thought we were trying to create layers, and that's expensive stuff, like Allison said. But anyway, that said, I'll go for a roll call vote. Mark?
Aye.
Of course, you made the motion. Allison?
Aye.
Taylor? Yeah, I saw your mouth go aye. Thanks, Taylor. Jenna, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Jenna? Jenna?
You're on mute, Jenna.
No, my internet cut out. Aye.
Okay, and Bob, aye, 5-0. Thank you, Audra. So 15K there. The second item is the use of contingency funds to invest in the development of a true conference room. I'm going to call it, for the French conference room. We've talked about this before. We've even had some preliminary proposals during the pandemic that we never implemented because they were kind of Band-Aids, frankly. But here, Audra, maybe you could talk a little bit about your ideas on what the contingency might include, what it might cover, and how we go from here.
Sure. This is kind of complicated. When we sort of spoke with Stone Mountain Sound, who kind of redid a lot of the broadcasting equipment about making it sort of a true conference room, it's just complicated, when it, sort of looking at what we have there. And so the direction that we gave them is kind of forget about what's there currently and just set it up so it can do the things that we need it to do, which is, allowing people to participate remotely, while also having people in the room, and then just sort of reconfiguring the room a little bit so that, it's more of an experience where the people who would be physically in the room and the people who are participating remotely can kind of feel like they're together, like we do when we're on Zoom. So they've come up with some ideas around that. It would be a very different system than what we have now. And a lot of it sort of comes down to having like a live stream computer that sort of runs Zoom and connects to YouTube and does all the things that sort of the video switcher and the box that we have there currently in the hardware cabinet does now. So it would be just a completely different system, but there are still some things that need to be worked out. But we're looking at something that would cost about $25,000 to get us like a true conferencing system. And one thing that hasn't really been priced out is if we're going to reconfigure the room and sort of, move the dais and, kind of try to set up the room a little bit differently, what is that going to entail? So we still haven't priced that aspect of it out yet.
Does, but we're still, the other side, the technical side, still talks about when we talked about the idea of having screens in the room, flat panels, all those kind of pieces for better viewing by all the parties, and that's included in the 20,000 portion, 25,000 portion, or that budget.
I think all of the electronic functions are, but things like, furniture and, just sort of like, because it's sort of like a raised platform, sort of removing that and to make the room more flexible and to accommodate a different setup. I don't think none of those have been priced out as part of this.
I presume you're talking about the lighting thing too at the same time you're talking about the physical room.
Yeah, that's the lighting is a whole other
okay.
can of worms.
Let's close that can. Mark.
I think it's important. We've discovered, we're truly in the a new century now in terms of how we interact with each other. And I can see that, where I was able to already attend some select board meetings remotely from out of state previous this year. I look forward to continuing to be able to do that. And yet also it's coming to the time we should be back in the conference room in person. Being able to mesh those two situations, I think is really important and is moving towards the future. I think it's an important, very important step.
And I think to kind of help make this easier on Juniper and myself, I think it would be good if we got sort of a group together because, in doing something like this, there are just so many things that, we need to kind of keep in mind. So it'd be, I think, good to have like a small group that we can, work with to bounce ideas off on. So I guess if I could get a couple of you to volunteer and, Janice, and maybe just having, somebody else that, uses the room for meetings who we can kind of like, maybe somebody who doesn't know a lot about this so that we can figure, are we creating a system where it's easy, easy for, members of the public to use it if there's a meeting or something like that. I think that would be helpful.
You're suggesting some communication with Stone Mountain and Juniper and yourself.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful to just be able to bounce some ideas off and get people to take a look and just make sure that it's intuitive and it's meeting all the goals of what we need that room to be used for.
Okay, fine. Well, go ahead, Allison.
So, I mean, I'm very supportive and also glad that we're not, so afraid to let go of the old system now that we've learned so much about, how things may or may not be in the future and what's possible. I would love to volunteer to be on the group, but what are we giving our approval for right now?
Just an establishment of a budget to start, and not to exceed of $25K for the electronic portion. But that excludes any physical changes to the room, as I heard Audra say, no, the dais comes out, that's extra cost. If we change furniture, that's extra cost, and it's not included in that budget.
Yeah, and I think as we sort of work through this, together with the little group, there might be other things that we haven't even thought of at this stage that we need to sort of come back to the board with and talk about. But
hold on, I wasn't, are, in the Stone Mountain part, I guess I don't know if I haven't really felt it has gone very well with the last system. And so are we choosing a company to do this already, or is the group that we authorize going to be kind of, I think there should be at least some kind of review process for.
We can go with design, bid, build process, but right now we're just trying to establish a budget and not approving any contractor.
Okay, because I heard you say, oh, this is the group that's going to work with Stone Mountain.
Well, I did say that, Allison. I did say that. That's something that you or myself or Audra and Juniper can discuss. They were cautious there too, but I
mean, it's fine. I just want, and maybe when we talk to them, it'll all be fine. We've just never had an opportunity as a select board to be able to.
This is taking a bucket of money from a contingency and ringing the bell now to get it going, because we need to do this, in my opinion, as soon as possible. But Ms. Jenna, you've had your hand up for an hour.
Well, thank you. Part of what I was going to say was about what Allison spoke to about working with a different company or integrating, which maybe is down the road. But I'm wondering whether this would be something that would better be presented as like a whole sum instead of coming back to select board again and again for furniture in piecemeal. Because I think for a lot of people, as much as valuable as we realize as this is and as valuable as it is to people when they want it, it does, and I hesitate to use this word, but it does feel a little bit frivolous. I mean, a little bit like, why are they spending money on that? It's, I feel like if it was just a one-time thing that was well explained and well planned out, that might be a little bit more of a digestible thing, just hitting the ear as a public citizen preparing for that. So that's my 2 cents.
Awesome.
I mean, I guess I feel like we've gotten a lot of feedback from people that, many of them like Zoom better than the previous system, and a lot of people asking that we make sure that it's really possible to continue doing this. And right now we're really far away from that being an enjoyable experience for people in the conference room. I mean, we could say, all right, let's just be realistic right now that we have about $25,000 in technology upgrades that we want, and probably another 5, 10, whatever in just room improvements, and present a higher number. And that's that would be the only change I would kind of be comfortable with. I think it makes sense for us to at least say, here, we're comfortable, we acknowledge that we're going to need to spend some money. We don't want everybody to spend a huge amount of time on this if we're then going to come back, and they need to kind of know the ballpark of what we're comfortable with. And I think everything that I've seen suggests that we need to be prepared to spend that amount of money if we want, screens that make it feel, we want people that aren't in the room to feel like they kind of are, and not be, there's just a lot of issues to solve. And I would
absolutely agree with what you just said, Allison, because that's the reason why it's on the agenda tonight without a specific proposal, because it's a kind of a utilization of all of our time to go out and get multiple quotes, whatever we do for doing the right thing here. It's not cheap. That's the message we want to get out to the public. This is not cheap. I've heard 2, 3 organizations that I'm involved with talk about hybrid, then they went and investigated and they said, oh, thud, it's it's going to be $15,000, $30,000. And they said, oh, they spend all the time and money doing that. I think we're just putting a peg on the wall right now that says our initial budget is $25,000, excluding furniture, and we just proceed and see where it goes. Marco.
I understand totally what Jen is saying about you don't want to open up a black hole. But on the other hand, we need to start the process, because if we wait, well, we're going to need to investigate this and that, it won't get done.
Yep.
So I think we need to start with the $25,000 budget to begin the process. So Audra can start to have meetings. I'd like to be the other volunteer off the select board, and with Allison about following through on this. And we need to start the process. So I'll make a motion that we approve contingency monies of $25,000 to begin a hybrid meeting system for the French conference room and our meeting system.
Second.
Second, motion's made in second. Any discussion? Not seeing any. Roll call. Taylor?
Aye.
Allison?
Aye.
Bob, aye. Mark?
Aye.
Jenna?
Aye.
Thank you. 5-0. Go for it, Audra. And we have 15 volunteers for you. So my bottom line is everybody's interested, Audra. I think you should do what you know how to play this out. The last, we have two discussion items on item 7, which is first of which is the Olmsted 200 program. Audra, again, would you mind leading us into that one?
Certainly, yes. So Olmsted 200 is the celebration of one of America's greatest landscape architects' 200th birthday. And is the landscape architect who is responsible for, the library grounds and amphitheater and Harbor Park. So I thought, given all the discussions we're having on Harbor Park and, resiliency for climate change, it would be a good opportunity to, sort of partner with the library in recognition of, the historic nature of the park and sort of opportunities for, moving forward and what we're going to do as a community to both, sort of honor this historic park and also, prepare for the changes that are sort of inevitable as a result of climate change. So I think there's, a lot of different things that we can do. There's a whole sort of packet of information that I included on, celebrating, as part of the program that the Olmsted Society is putting on. But I definitely think that, sort of reimagining that space for the future in line with, the sort of, the vision that that was used when it was created and some of the goals that we have now for resiliency would be a really appropriate thing to do for a 200th celebration.
In parallel, I would add from input from the library director, they have had some preliminary discussion and ideas related to this celebration also. So this is up for select board discussion, but yes, go ahead. Allison, go ahead.
Yeah, and so it's, we always hear that Olmsted name thrown out, and for years I kind of thought of it as like a barrier to sometimes doing anything different. It's like, oh, it's it's an Olmsted Park, so you can't touch it, whether that be the Village Green or the amphitheater or Harbor Park. But as I've been doing a lot of research into the history of these parks, I've also done a lot of research into Frederick Law Olmsted and then his children who carried on after his death. And we're part of a kind of a network of Olmsted designed parks all across the country. And there are thousands of them. And many of them are dealing with some of the same problems that we're dealing with today. And with sea level rise and flooding and sort of wrestling with that idea of how do we take these historic spaces that we've come to love so much and honor them, but also update them. And Frederick Law Olmsted was actually a really radical guy. At the time when a lot of these parks were being created, it was kind of a radical environmental move to take areas of the urban space and convert that to green space. That was certainly the case in Camden. A lot of these places like the Village Green were set for major development and buildings. And so it was kind of this really innovative idea at the time. And So I've been doing some of the webinars with some of the other parks that are trying to wrestle with these things. And one of the kind of topics that or concepts that has come out of it is, how do we take the Olmsted, those guiding principles of working with nature and not against nature, and creating democratic spaces that are available to everybody? And how do we not just take these parks and say, well, they have to stay exactly the same forever, but say, how do we take those guiding principles that originally created them and use that as like a, how would Olmsted address the challenges of today? And so I guess what would be nice to get sort of approval from the select board on is the idea of approaching the National Association of Olmsted Parks to become an official partner, to possibly host some events and speakers. The April 26th, 2022 is the day that a lot of select boards, a lot of towns across the country are proclaiming as Olmsted Day. We could pass, they're encouraging us to pass a proclamation or a resolution. And so partnering with the library is definitely a great thing if we can sort of do that together, and then approach the National Association of Olmsted Parks and say, we'd like to participate.
Well, perhaps the start would be to have that conversation regarding it with the library at the same time.
Oh, I mean, I've sent, I presented this very topic months ago to the library board in a PowerPoint presentation. So this is not a new concept. I haven't heard from them specifically, but everybody is, of course, there's very little to be against. It's a really cool thing that we have so many of these parks, and we even have plans. The Olmsteds, they designed different things in Camden that didn't come to fruition. Like I have plans for what they would have done on the public landing, for instance. So it's kind of like a fun thing that could guide some of our future conversations about all kinds of things. But maybe if a couple of us get in touch with ask the library if they want to choose a few people to make a joint committee, because the Village Green too, there's a lot of discussions that come up about the Village Green and the way that other places are dealing with these issues is I think we could use a little bit of inspiration, even with our Village Green policies and things like that.
Audra, would you want to take that charge with the library? You want one of us to do it? I'd be happy to do it also.
Well, I do think that this has got to be something that comes from the board, the select board, to the library board of trustees. Okay. Sort of like a formal activity that you would like to do in conjunction with them.
Well, I'd be happy to bring out the discussion with Nikki about what the next steps may be jointly, and I'll be happy to take that charge if the board wants me to. But because we've had some discussions about other things with the library, and that'd be fine. Do you need anything else besides that right now?
Nope, I think that's a good starting place.
Perfect. On to our last discussion item. Allison, can we bring in Jeremy, please? Please, which is the status of the zoning ordinance amendments which we have discussed for the B1 parking standards. And we'll start with Jeremy. Can talk to us about the status of that and what the schedule is. I know there is one for the planning board and public hearings. Correct, Jeremy?
Hi, thank you. At the last select board meeting, you had asked me to talk to the planning board about the exempting parking requirements in the downtown and in the transitional harbor district. So we did have a meeting on the 20th on that issue. The planning board is in full support of exempting all businesses in the downtown and in the transitional harbor from off-street parking requirements, except for lodging facilities, inns, hotels, motels, bed and breakfast, those kinds of things in those zones. And they did have concerns with large restaurants. And so I was tasked with kind of drafting an ordinance. And what I did send to all of you and to the planning board a draft that would exempt all downtown uses to have off-street parking except for lodging and restaurants with 150 seats or more. And then those that had 150 seats or more, they would be required to have half of what they currently have. And so that is under discussion at the planning board meeting on Thursday. And depending if they want to revise or approve as is, it sounds like I did get some feedback from some of them, at least one member today, who doesn't like the 150 number. So we could do this with a planning board discussion. And then if we want to have a hearing on the 17th, which is doable, we would have to make that decision on Thursday night, the planning board would. And we'd have to advertise that in the Kennebec Journal on Saturday and then in the Camden Herald next week.
Okay, thanks.
You guys asked me to come up with a schedule and a draft ordinance, and that's what I did.
Okay, good. Mark, you have a comment?
Well, one question, I watched the planning board meeting. One question I have is how many restaurants do we have with 150 or more seats?
Michael.
Two.
Yeah.
And they are?
Waterfront.
Right, correct.
And what's the-
Waterfront and what?
Peter Otts and Waterfront.
Oh, water.
Peter Otts and Waterfront.
Thank you.
Correct.
And possibly how many, and Lyman Morris is gonna have how many?
I don't have that off the top of my head, Allison. They would be, we're not exempting that part of the, that.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
environment.
Okay, and to take the question, so Peter Otts on the waterfront, and what are they required to have for parking right now?
One parking space for every 4 seats. And one parking space for every 8 linear feet of bench space.
Okay.
So what I would have proposed would be that they're required to have 1 space for every 8 seats and 1 space for every 16 feet of linear feet.
Okay, so you're reducing the demands for them.
Yes, by half. I mean, we're getting rid of all the other restaurants smaller than that is.
Right, no, I understand that. That's fine.
And just to be clear, because we've also got a select board change going on very quickly.
Yeah.
This will go to the planning board again on Thursday, and presuming that the quickest it could get to public hearing would be the 17th for the planning board public hearing.
Correct.
And assuming that procedure, they would be coming to the select board, well, July, for its discussion and another public hearing, correct?
Yes, however you want to handle it after the planning board does their, I will say that there are 2 planning board members that will not be full members that will not be there on Thursday night.
I see.
Trying to get some feedback from them right now.
I see.
That would be the chair and another full member.
Okay, Allison, you have a comment?
Thank you for this. I thought the memo was great and the draft was great. I just want to make sure we don't get mired in too many details that we can, like, if you can kind of figure out what we can get through without, you know, I think what you proposed sounds great. I don't know was the concern, about the 150 number, was that a concern? Which way was the concern?
They thought that, at least one member thought that was too high. He was looking more at 60 to 75.
I see.
Than the 150. And I will say, just for your, I mean, like Zoots, where they're going in their new shop, they're at 40. They would like to have more. They can't have more. And it's not about Zoots. It's about, from my perspective, kind of a archaic, old auto-centric planning theory of off-street parking. And you know, that's where we are today. Most towns are here too. Lots of progressive towns are transitioning beyond off-street parking in downtown villages.
Way beyond.
Where are these businesses? I mean, where do they all, I know where some of them find parking, but that's like, for example, for Peter Otts, where is their off-street parking?
Yeah, to be honest, Allison, I can't answer that question off the top of my head. I'd have to dig in through the files and track that. And I'm sure they submit for their annual licensing.
Well, there is Jeremy, that private property down there has off-street parking.
And the church has off-street parking that they lease.
No, but nobody parks at those places for.
Understood. Right.
So I mean, that's what we're afraid of. Look at
it shows the point that there's really not a need for that off-street parking.
Right, I mean, who knows where does anybody know where the waterfront off-street parking is? Does anybody know where any of this is? To me, it's a little further up Chestnut Street, depending on the situation, you know.
Right. Yeah.
That's what everybody does, so I wonder how much with the planning board needs to be just, I often feel that we need some kind of expertise to come in and help us to highlight some of these issues. Even just a refresher course on the downtown master plan is helpful, but I think we should do whatever we can do to get this through fast. And I just have a quick question on, do we need for zoning ordinance changes, we often talk about the meeting planning board review before the select board. Is that, do they need planning board approval, or do they just need review in order for the select board to put them out to voters?
Yeah, it's a good question. Actually, Audra and I were chatting about this the other day, because what if you guys, the planning board does a hearing, and then you guys propose a minor change to what that happens as part of your process and your public hearing. So we're going to actually I'm going to chat with Bill Kelly tomorrow on some of the stuff, because I agree. I believe that it requires planning board approval of that change. And city council form of government is a whole nother thing. You can override a planning more people.
We're not,
right.
No, but that's getting to the heart of what I'm asking, though. So
I'll follow
approval
up.
Means okay. So if the planning board were to not have a majority vote in favor,
correct, they wouldn't move it forward.
And so we have no ability to put something out to voters that the planning board doesn't approve, or we're getting clarity on that.
I don't believe so, but I'm going to talk to Bill about that.
I'd question that, but let's find out. That's an important point. Mark, you had a comment.
Yeah, it's the thing about, I think about the waterfront, because I've eaten there a number of times. I think Jen has eaten there once or twice. And there are a couple parking lots right by the restaurant. If they have had to secure private parking, we talked about this in the planning board meeting. They've had to make a deal. We've talked about it somewhere. They've had to make a deal with somebody that owns parking spaces somewhere out. So they technically have it. They're paying somebody for spaces that never get used. And it seems sort of ridiculous. The restaurants, when they get really full, or at nighttime, or people are at lunchtime, and the people are going to take the parking spots that they can find. They're going to take them at the landing. They're going to take them on the streets.
Yeah,
it's almost a ridiculous requirement, and that's what we're trying to get rid of, because they'll just buy, somebody will sell them, I'll give you, so many spaces, but they won't get used. And that's what we're trying to get rid of, is this ridiculous law that doesn't really impact anybody except somebody making money off of it because they can.
Right. Jeremy, when you have to talk to Bill, why don't you get us an email about the entire process and the legalities of it, not the least of which is what Allison's question about if they disapprove, we approve, and then we go through, assume that they approve it, we go to the select board's public hearing, and then we have to take it to town vote.
Correct.
So let's verify all those steps, please.
Yeah. And I'm just going to keep the process kind of moving along.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think we're obviously all charged up by it, and we have been when we first mentioned this ordinance 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I will say, like, looking downtown right now, downtown is full. The shops are full, and it's a great thing to see. We've issued a lot of certificates of occupancy and approved a lot of change of uses over this year. And there's been, I think, 3 instances that people have run up against the parking issue. But we've worked with them to get through it. Yes, they'd like a little bit more, but we've gotten there. So I think any changes we can bring forward will be really good for the economic development in town. So
thank you very much.
Yeah.
Obviously, good job getting this thing accelerated, by the way. We appreciate that.
No problem.
And so our last select board agenda item, we have select board reports, and I'm going to leave Jenna and Taylor to the end. Mark, you go ahead.
Bob, I'd like to start, and can you bring Allison and Bob, can you bring Matt Siegel in? Because I'm going to involve him in my report.
Sure.
Matt, of course, as he comes on, Matt, of course, is the vice chair of the Mid-Coast Internet Coalition, and we have a vote coming up on that on June 8th. And what we've seen recently is, and Matt can talk about it, is there are all of a sudden advertising emails going out from corporate, it appears to be corporate entities that are starting to put scare tactics about, oh, you don't want the government to do your internet. It's going to be, and basically I'm really angry and disappointed, although I'm not surprised about this. Basically, to make it clear for everybody what's happening is the Mid-Coast Internet Coalition that we're voting on is an ability to do a municipal, and this is where I want Matt to help me if I fail on any of this, a municipal utility to build the network for high fiber to all premises. And then we will not supply the internet, but we will build the railroad for it basically. And then the internet companies can compete to supply the internet. And the reason we're doing this is because if we don't, the internet companies have a monopoly. And when they have a monopoly, they can charge everything they want. And we're doing this so that they have to compete and keep the prices down and provide better service. That's why we're doing this. And one of the things that I think is foolish about this, oh, government doesn't do as good a job as private entities, is who is the government? Who is the government? Are there some secret people here that are not doing, that go out and do a terrible job? Well, it's interesting because I look at Bob. I'm going to take Bob as an example. A CEO of a construction company ran a major worldwide company, and he is now running our town as chairman. And he has as much or more experience than just about anybody running these big corporate companies. He didn't all of a sudden become lame and incompetent because he's now a member of government. And I want people to understand that there are going to be really talented, really smart people running this utility. And what it will do is will keep the difference between Bob running the town and Bob running his company. When he runs the town, he's not looking to make a profit out of it. So what we provide will be less expensive, it will be cheaper, and we can provide better service at the same price. And Matt, is there anything you want to offer to what I'm saying? Because I'm pissed off that these corporate companies are all of a sudden doing this sneaky kind of advertising and letter writing to try and scare people away from doing the right thing.
Well, good morning and good evening to you all. I'm on the West Coast. Mark, you did a great job in terms of explaining what we're up against. And I was also quite taken aback, Bob, by how blatant the opposition has become to this particular project. But Mark, you summarized quite nicely what we're up against, and also more importantly, what we're doing. We really are creating a municipal utility, nonprofit, that will serve the community. Mark, I think to your point, what we're trying to do first and foremost is to get people to come out on June 8th, which is really important to make sure that they vote in favor of this, so we can create the interlocal agreement between Camden and with Rockport to form the legal entity. And at that point, once that's up and going, we'll be in good stead to move forward with the plans as you described them.
Great, thank you. And Matt, like I said, is the vice chairman of the group that's been working to do this. He's put a tremendous amount of work into it, as has Deb Hall, who is the chairman of the group. And there's a bunch of people from a bunch of towns. And it's really important that we do this because we found how important internet is to us. And if we can provide the best service to our people, we would be remiss in not doing so.
Well, Mark, and I would also just add that this is not just a mid-coast Maine situation. I mean, we're really talking about a change in terms of service across the nation. So one of the things that we're doing in terms of Mid-Coast Internet and the Mid-Coast Internet Coalition, we're working on all levels. So we're busy lobbying in Washington, D.C. to change some of the legislation in terms of the funding. Next week, we're dealing with the county commissioners to address potential ARP funding, Bob. You and I have talked about this extensively, how important it is to see this as a regional endeavor, and how important it is, Mark, as a regional endeavor to have communities involved, to have the county involved, and then to tie this into a situation in the state, Mark, where we have large amounts of funds through ARP, approximately $129 million coming in, Bob, that we're looking to make sure that it's not, Mark, to your point, not handed over to private corporations. That there's an opportunity to really make a huge difference in terms of our regional opportunity for all people by getting some of that funding to these municipal utilities and the organizations behind them.
And the one other thing I'll say, because for most people, it's a matter of finances. Mm-hmm. And what's happening is this will be paid by bonds that we paid back by the internet companies that are paying the utility to provide service to the houses. There will not be tax increase. This will not affect people's taxes. They will not pay more taxes. This will end up, the end run will end up being paid by the corporations.
Right. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Matt. Good job out there, Matt. You guys in the task force really took this thing with record time to bring it to the decision point next Tuesday, which is everything Mark said is very, very important. It reminds me in a little way of what we ran into last December, January, when we tried to go to approve the Siemens project and do, save a bunch of energy and reduce the tonnage of carbon. And of course, last meeting, you had some contractors come in and saying, "Oh, they're bad guys. They don't know what they're doing," and blah, blah, blah. Well, when that occurs, you're doing something right.
It's a tough battle, though, Bob. And I just want to thank Audra, who is on this call, for her hard work in terms of lobbying for us, in terms of joining forces with other town managers to make sure that we are a unified voice for both the county and for the state. So again, thank you, Audra, and thank you, Mark, for your help in all this.
Thank you, Matt. Have a good trip and hurry back.
And I would just to kind of quickly add to it, if anybody sees these Facebook advertisements and they have questions about the project and what the intent is and what the utility is doing, the best source of information is to go to Mid-Coast Internet. It's not to go to mainpolicy.org, because you're not going to get, good, accurate information about what we're trying to do by going to this statewide organization that is having money funneled through it from, people who are their interests are to stop municipalities and regions from doing this. It's not to try to increase competition. It's try to stymie it. So just be skeptical of those messages that you see on Facebook advertisements and go to the source to get your information.
And thank you, Audra. That's, again, and for all of you on the select board, I really appreciate it. We've just been pummeled by these folks, and it's really wonderful to hear your support and really appreciate for all the hard work we've been doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Mark, for your comments and leading us into that one. And just as a segue to that, my quick thing, there is next June 8th at 2 p.m., which is the next meeting, Audra, of the county commissioners, which we've all been invited to participate, and that's regard to the ARP funding, whether it should go to what source it should go to, from broadband to affordable housing to whatever. It's an important one for us to attend. Other reports, Allison?
I am going to pass for this time. The watershed school covered some of it, and
okay, thank you very much. Now to our two, well, I can't even say it. Jenna, do you want to lead?
I will, yeah. I said a little bit at the beginning of this meeting, stepping back has been a very hard decision right up until the day papers were due, as you all know. And I think the community has some really strong folks stepping in, running for these two seats. And it's been a huge honor, and it's been a connection to my dad and to the community that I love. And I'm not going anywhere. I will just be getting sort of back in touch with working more and doing some things that around my farm and some personal things that I just need a little bit of time as a private citizen, I think. But I'm sure I'll think of a million things, and I'll probably write a column. And but you are all so special to me, and you always will be. And I'm so glad that you're my friends. Not Allison, but the rest of you. No. And I'm just so glad for this experience and this community, and the good, the bad, and the ugly, which we all know is part of the experience. And I knew this would be a tough night. It's been sort of something that I've been dreading today, sort of this moment. And yeah, without getting myself too embarrassingly upset, I just want to thank all of you and thank this community for believing in us and giving us this honor. And I think we've made some really amazing steps, and we've had a lot of fun and some not so fun, but I really appreciate all of you, and I couldn't have asked for a better group of people to work with, both the previous board with John and this board. And so thank you all, and I'm right around the corner. Call me with the scoop.
Mr. Benzee.
Very well said, Jenna, as usual. Jenna's a tough act to follow, and she hit all of my sentiments very well. I think it's it's been a long and a short 3 years, kind of the same time, which is hard to imagine. I've really just enjoyed so much working with all of you, and I've learned so much from all of you. I think the most exciting, I really didn't know what to expect before getting on the select board, other than kind of the general nitty-gritty that everybody understands about town government. But I've really enjoyed how different all of our experiences are, not just on the select board, but Audra and other staff members, and the breadth of knowledge that we've had on this board and through town staff has just been eye-opening, and a great experience being able to work with all of you. And the board in particular, I think it's so encouraging, given that the word politician really is a 4-letter word these days. I have to say it's been enjoyable, particularly the times when we've disagreed on things. I have never felt that we haven't handled items in ways that I hope set an example for how bodies like this should run. I'm just very proud to have been involved with the town for the last 3 years, and really proud of a lot of the stuff that we've gotten done and agendas that we've moved forward, that I think will be very impactful for the town in years to come. And agree with Jen. I think you've got some great candidates to fill 2 seats, and the town has a tough decision to make next week, but I'll be thrilled to see what happens, and just thank you all. And like John says, John French says, I'll just be a concerned private citizen from this point forward, and I'm also not going anywhere. So I look forward to seeing everybody in another capacity soon.
Mark,
Thanks.
Mark, go ahead.
I am thankful and yet heartbroken to make a motion to adjourn this particular select board.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, and I hate to take the vote, Mark. Allison.
Aye.
Taylor.
Aye.
Jenna.
Aye.
And Bob. Aye also. God bless you all, especially you two. We'll see you soon. Don't worry.
Thanks, guys.
Wish we give hugs. That's the problem with the Zoom guy. I can't reach out and give somebody a hug right now. It's not very natural to me, but we'll get it. We'll make up for it.
No, you hang up first.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.